I have my son with me tonight instead of my wife, so I have an assistant.
Awesome.
She's starting a new job today, her first full-time day, so she couldn't make it, so my son joined us for a change.
Well, that's awesome.
All right. So let me just make sure I'm pronouncing this right, because I don't want to screw. I'm very bad with names, as you can tell you. It's Rebekah Hagan.
Yeah.
All right.
Do I need a heads up on what you're going to ask me?
No, you're just gonna. Don't worry. I ask very simple questions.
Okay.
And by the way, I should point out that this is going to go. First, it'll go on YouTube.
Okay.
It'll go on the blog, and I'll use the interview, depending on how long it goes, either 1 week or 2 weeks, on my Catholic radio show, Your Prayer Intentions.
Cool. Okay.
So, and I give you full permission to use the video and anything of it in any way you see fit.
Okay.
So, which is only fair. Sam, whenever you're ready.
Oh, it's rolling.
Oh, now you tell me, because I'm going to put all the notes. Well, I am here with Rebekah Hagan. We were just at what used to be keynote, and is now the great pro-life event. And you are a keynote speaker. And I got to say, Rebekah, your story was really something to hear. And can you give us the 3-minute version?
Sure.
So people who were not here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I so appreciate that. God is just so good, even when we don't deserve it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all to His glory. But basically, what I was sharing tonight was I had 2 unplanned teenage pregnancies, and with my first child, I was able to choose life and never really considered abortion. But with my second child, as you heard, it was just a totally different ball game. I was frantic. I thought I'd have to drop out of college. My parents this time, there will be no grace. They'll kick me out. And so immediately started a chemical abortion or a medication abortion. I was about 7-8 weeks pregnant, took that first abortion pill, and then had a instant radical change of heart, change of mind, and just by the grace of God, found what is now called abortion pill reversal, and was able to use progesterone to basically reverse that abortion pill, and my child was saved.
And your son is now 8.
Yes, he's 8 years old and born perfectly healthy. The abortion pill reversal was successful, and since then there's been about 2,600 other babies saved by abortion pill reversal, which is amazing.
Now, Real Options offers the reversal for the abortion pill, which is I should have mentioned earlier. Real Options is the group that's here in New Hampshire. And I think a lot of people just aren't aware that that reversal is there, that you still have that chance.
Yep.
And I don't, the media really doesn't talk about it. Nobody seems to want to talk about it.
Right.
And when you were telling your story, when you didn't take the second pill, Planned Parenthood reached out to you and literally started pressuring you to take the second pill,
right,
which I thought was an amazing thing.
Yeah, I think that they are concerned with liabilities. I think they're concerned with, if we admit that some women change their mind, then maybe we have to admit that abortion really isn't good for women. And that's not good for their narrative. So they really try to silence stories like mine. And even as of lately, they've done some blocking of advertisements of abortion pill reversal. I mean, they are not for choice, because if they were, they would be for women changing their mind and making the choice to save their child, because that's a choice too. But they're not for that.
Now, when you were telling your story, you have a Baptist background and a very, as the father, and a very strong Christian upbringing.
Yeah.
And you talked about how all of that was going out the window because you were like in a panic. You had this situation.
Right.
And people will forget that this will happen. In fact, today in the daily readings, because in Catholic churches we have Mass every day,
Right.
you had Paul talking about how, my mind says we want to do this, but my body says this, and we're at war.
Yeah.
And how, looking back at it now, that cloud, what would you say to a person who's in that cloud of panic?
Gosh, that's a really good question. First, there's a couple of things that I wish I would have asked myself, or wish I would have turned to somebody more spiritually mature to ask me. Things like, have you considered that while abortion is accessible and the world says it's acceptable, have you considered that actually might not be God's best for you? And maybe there's a reason for that. maybe God is saying not just no, but no because this is going to hurt you down the line. Abortion is going to be traumatic for you. Oh, and the child that you're carrying was also made and created in the image of God. Another thing that I would challenge someone, ask them to really ponder and think about is, what would the most spiritually mature person in your life, maybe it's a grandmother, maybe it's a priest, maybe it's a pastor, what would they think about your decision right now? Because I didn't stop to think about that. I just thought mind over matter, I have to make this choice. When in reality, my mother, my grandmother, my pastor would have not supported my decision. And I look up to them, so I should be thinking, what does God think about my choice? What do spiritually mature people in my life think about my choice?
Now, another part of your story that rang true to me is you were talking about how your father, because you had had the first child,
Yeah.
you had left an abusive relationship, you're living with your parents, and your father was constantly telling you, don't get pregnant.
Yeah.
And like when I would leave my sons and their friends home alone, if I would go out the house, I would say, what are the rules? I said, and I would drill them ever since they were kids. No booze, no drugs, no sex.
Yeah.
And I'd be walking out, what are the rules? And they would, and everyone in the house, all the visitors would all repeat it. But yet, if the rules were broken,
Yeah.
the love doesn't change. People who love you generally don't stop loving you because you do something wrong.
Right.
And I remember when you're telling how when your father found out, because you were in the process of reversing the abortion.
Right.
How surprised were you that this person that you were so afraid of was still going to love you? And how important is that for people to understand?
First of all, it's so important for people to understand. And just like you expressed just a few moments ago, and if you do mess up, I'm still going to love you. And I didn't take the time to think about that. Is my dad going to be more mad that I'm pregnant or more mad that I'm aborting my child, his grandchild, upstairs in the back room? You know, things like, which one really is my dad going to be more upset with? Because had I really thought about it, it would be, no, he's going to be more upset that I had an abortion, right? Also, the things that I thought about my dad, he's going to kill me, he's going to abuse me, weren't in character with my dad. So now I'm perpetuating all these lies onto him and fears taking over. But my dad was shocked and devastated, and he realized, okay, as a parent, not everything I say to my child, they're interpreting the way that I mean it. And so he said one thing and I interpreted it as literal, when it really was not.
Hey, one of the dangers, and you mentioned this, again, this is talking from your story, and I believe that Real Options is going to have some of this video up. You're going to want to, if you get a chance, check out their website so you can see this hear her story. It's really something to hear. You mentioned how once you got out of the abortion clinic, you'd already taken the first pill, you're in the car, and Satan was like, gotcha.
Yeah.
And how, the fact that you were able to, Satan always tends to, oh, it's not a big deal, oh, it's not a big deal, oh, it's not a big deal, oh, now it's a big deal,
Yeah.
now you can't escape.
Right.
How did you get out of the now you can't escape? Was it the lifeline that Christ threw? And what thought came into your mind that made the difference there?
I think that's a really good way to put it, the lifeline that Christ threw, that I didn't even necessarily he was throwing. I didn't even realize he was throwing to me, because kind of instantaneously after praying and after realizing, oh my gosh, I've been so deceived, it was like second nature to turn to my phone looking for answers. And I think that's how a lot of people now, and especially my generation, that's just what we do. It's what we're trained to do, research and answer. But really right now, I do think that was Christ saying, here's a lifeline. I'm going to throw you, a life raft. Just take it. I'll help you. So absolutely, I see God and God's fingerprints over this entire story.
Now, from that start, now you're across the country speaking publicly. How did this come about?
That's a good question. I was in college at a Christian school, transferred, met a woman that was working for 40 Days for Life, and just started attending some events with her. Never told her my story. I'd had this baby by now. She didn't know anything about me. And when abortion pill reversal started becoming more talked about in 2015, I said, well, that was my experience. My child was saved by abortion pill reversal. She asked me to speak for about 5 minutes at an event before the keynote speaker, and it just turned into really a God-ordained ministry, because I didn't want it. I didn't want to share my story. And God said, go, just go and do it, and it'll glorify me. And I'm just grateful that I no longer have to say that My sin doesn't own me. I'm not called by my sin. I'm called by my name, and it's been redeemed in Jesus for His glory.
And that's the point. In fact, today, so many people define themselves by their sin, and the society encourages you to define yourself by your sin, when your identity is as a person loved by God.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Now, in closing, is there a website where people can find more information? And what, other than the speaking that you're doing now, what are the other things you're involved with?
Sure, that's a great question. So I'm pretty involved with the Abortion Co-Reversal Network. We've, like I said, helped about 2,600 other women choose life after starting a chemical abortion.
So that's just your own network, not counting other places that might be doing this as well?
It's everybody in one network. So yes, it includes Real Options. It includes all the pregnancy centers around the nation. And they founded it. I just am working with them. So I'm doing that. So abortioncoreversal.com if you're ever looking for information from doctors, scientific stats, things like that. Always great. Of course, keeping up with your local pregnancy center, Real Options, is fantastic, because that's who's really being the hands and feet of Jesus right here in New Hampshire, serving women, walking through the doors, and experiencing unplanned pregnancies. That's the best way, I think, to get plugged in locally.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
it was a great presentation.
Thank
and may
you.
God continue to bless you in your work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.